Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to discuss about second language acquisition presentation, specifically about instructed second language acquisition with its approaches. So my name is Muhammad Hadiansyah. I'm standing here as a moderator and a timekeeper. Before we head into the presentation, I'm about to tell you about the regulation of our presentation today. So each group will be given a maximum of time presentation up to 15 minutes, and after that will be followed by the question and answer section. And without further ado, now we're heading to, I'll give the floor to the first group from Focus on Forms to deliver its presentation. So the first group, the time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 1. We are here to present our material that focus on form, which is in instructed second language acquisition. So it will be presented by me, Siti Munawara, and Sidi Prabowo, Muhammad Nur Hadiansyah, Jaira Tunisha, and Samsuriana Muhlas. Okay, so here the history. The focus on form approach deeply noted in the grammar translation method was a widely adopted language teaching method during the 9th and early 20th centuries. The method placed a strong emphasis on teaching grammar rules and vocabulary through translation exercises. The primary focus was on achieving accuracy and correctness in language use, rather than promoting meaningful communication. As the field of language teaching evolved in the 1960s and 1970s, several new approaches emerged that prioritized the use of language in meaningful communication. These innovative approaches, including the direct method and the natural approach, were developed as a response to the perceived limitations of the grammar translation method and other traditional approaches. Despite this advancement, some language teachers and researchers expressed concerns that these new approaches did not pay sufficient attention to grammar and accuracy. To address this perceived gap, Michael Long introduced the concept of focus on form in the 1980s. Long defined focus on form as overtly drawing students' attention to linguistic elements as a response to the perceived limitation. Linguistic elements as they arise incidentally in lessons whose overriding focus is on meaning or communication. Long's focus on form approach aimed to strike a delicate balance between accuracy and fluency. It was designed to help learners develop a more intuitive understanding of grammar through meaningful communication. This approach was influenced by research in second language acquisition that suggested that successful language acquisition requires both input that is rich in meaning and opportunities for learners to notice and reflect on language forms. Okay, and then it will continue by Jaira Tunisia. Jairan perfect. Let me just share and then we just. Mm. Mm.
Definition about focus on one is a relational approach that encompasses the teaching of study.
Wait. Just move here.
Okay, definition about focus on form is traditional approach that emphasizes the teaching of isolated grammatical structure. In this approach, learners are taught specific grammar rules and are expected to memorize them. The focus is on acquire and correctness, and learners are often drilled on grammar exercise. Focus on meaning, on the other hand, emphasizes the use of language in meaningful communication. In this approach, learners are encouraged to use language to convey meaning, and grammar is taught in context. The focus is on frequency and communication, and learners are often engaged in communication active such as role plays, discussion, and debates. C. Focus on form is more relaxed approach that seeks to combine the strategies of both focus on form and focus on meaning. In this approach, learners are engaged in meaningful communication, but attention is also paid to specific grammatical structure as they arise in the context of communication. The focus is on both acquire and frequency, and learn are encouraged to notice communication. The focus in on both acquire and notice and reflect on the language they use in order to improve their acquire over time. Overall, the focus on form approach seek to strike a balance between acquire and frequency and help learn develop a more intuitive understanding of grammar through meaningful communication. 3. C. Expert of the theory. Mikolam is the expert who is most closely related to the focus of the document, which is the concept of focus on forms. In language teaching, Long introduced the concept of focus on form as a way, a balance acquired and frequency in language teaching. And his idea have been influential in the development of this approach. The document discusses Long's idea in detail and provides example of how they have been applied in language teaching. Long introduced the concept of focus on form as a way balance acquire and frequency in language teaching, and then presented by Mr. Hadiansyah.
Okay, thank you. So before I'm heading to my presentation to prevent any misunderstanding, actually, in our topic today, there are three parts. Starts from focus on forms with S, and it transforms into focus on meaning. All right, and the last formation or the last format is focus on form. So it just emitted the letter of S behind of forms. Yeah. All right. So here, regarding to these three types of the focus, okay, I'd like to define what's actually English learning method that we already recognize or already quite familiar. The first one, focus on forms, define about the grammar translation method or GTM, and also the audiolingual method, OALM, right? And next is focus on meaning. It emphasizes about the natural approach and also the total physical response or TPR, right? And last is focus on form without S. It emphasizes about the silent way and also direct method and communicative language teaching. Okay, the further explanation also and implementation will be defined by the next presenter. But before that, I'd like to focus with the types of focus on form, which clearly introduced by the Michael Long, which has been introduced in our previous slide. All right, so the proactive focus on form and as a reactive focus on form, these two things clearly introduced by Michael Long. So what are the difference? The proactive focus on form involves the teacher planning specific activities on lesson that draw learners' attention to particular linguistic form. So practically, it can be done through activities such as grammar drills, error correction exercise, and explicit instruction on grammar rules. So why Michael Love would like to do such a thing? Because it planned focus on form is to help learners develop accuracy and reduce errors. However, the reactive focus on forms uh, occurs or happen in response to learners need as they arise during communicative activities. So this type of focus on form are less structured and more flexible as it allows the teacher to respond learners' needs in a moment or during classroom. Incidentally, focus on form can be achieved through techniques such as recast, clarification, request, or negotiation of meaning. Now, the purpose or the goal of this incidental focus or reactive focus is to help learners develop fluency and communicative competence. So in brief, that many language teaching methods can incorporate elements like the all of three approaches that I have mentioned before, that boundaries between approaches are not always clear-cut. Okay, however, the categorization above should give you a general sense of how these methods align with the three second language acquisition teaching approaches. Okay, now we move to the implementation. I'll give the floor to Suya, please.
Okay, thank you, Kak Hadi, for the opportunity. So I would like to.
Ya suaranya.
Iya, Kak.
Please, your voice.
Okay, thank you, Kak Hadi, for the opportunity. I'd like to discuss about focus on form implementation. Like Kak Hadi said before, there are three focus here. So the first is focus on form, and the second is focus on meaning, and the focus on forms, and the second is focus on meaning, and the last is focus on form without S. Okay, next slide. Okay, for the implementation of focus on forms, there are two grammar translation methods. For the first is, actually this is not only grammar translation method. There are two because the second is audiolingual. This is typo maybe. Okay. I continue. So the first is grammar translation method. This implementation is involve teaching first language with minimal use of the target language. And vocabulary is often taught as list of isolated words, and detailed explanation about the structure of grammar is given. And next is grammar provides the rules for putting words together, and instruction often focuses on the form and the inflection for words. The next is reading of difficult classical texts in the beginning of the class, and etc. So the example, you can see the example of the grammar translation method in a Spanish class. Students learn vocabulary list.
Okay, sorry for interrupting, Suya. Our time remains 5 minutes. Make it fast.
Okay. Okay, you can see the explanation above about the grammar translation method. The next method is audiolingual actually. So the audiolingual is use drills and pattern. There are so many methods here. For the first is repetition, inflection, replacement, restatement, completion, transposition, expansion, contraction, transformation, integration, rejoinder, and the last is restoration. So you can see the example that have been written there. The next is natural approach and the total physical response method. So this approach is the teacher being the main source of the comprehensible input in the target language. So the teacher make a friendly classroom atmosphere with a low effective filter for learning. You can see the example below. And then next is total physical response method. That is students only do what was instructed by the tutor of their classmate, and they can do what they have heard from the teacher. Okay, the next is direct method. Direct method involves showing picture, describing them, and asking question about them in the target language. There is an example also. You can read that. The next is communicative language teaching. That is CLT method. The teacher greeted the student and led them to pray and blah blah blah. And the teacher will give a picture and question, and the teacher explain to the students and complete the sentence and practice expression. And there is an example also here. Okay, I think that's all for me. It will be the next discussion will be delivered by Mr. Siddiq. Oh, the last is the silent way. This is the last of the method from focus on form without S. In this method, language teaching method emphasizes silence from the teacher and use physical objects. And there is an example also in that method. I think enough. Thank you.
All right, guys. Good afternoon. I hope that you can hear my voice. So as it is mentioned by my friends about the focus on forms, the focus on meaning, and the focus on form. In this case, I would like to explain about the strength and the weakness of those forms. Okay, so the first one is focus on forms. So the strengths for this one is it helps learners develop accuracy and reduce errors, and it also useful for learners who prefer explicit instructions. But the weakness of focus on forms is can be demotivating for some learners, or probably it can be kind of boring because they are focusing on the grammar and the structures, and it may not help learners develop fluency or communicative competence because they're too focused on the structures. So it will be very difficult for those who wants to focus on the fluency. On the other hand, the focus on meaning. On the focus on meaning, we have strength. The strength is it helps learners develop fluency and communications, and it's more engaging. But the weakness of this focus on meaning is it may not be sufficient for learners who needs more explicit instructions, and may not help learners develop accuracy or reduce errors. Next. And the last one is focus on form. The focus on form has a strength, for example, like it can help learners develop with both accuracy and fluency, and it is engaging and motivating for learners who enjoy problem-solving activities. But the weakness probably from the teacher's sides, it may be challenging for the teachers to implement effectively, and it may not be suitable for all learners or contexts. Maybe for some learners they need different methods, but probably focus on form is the most suitable for all students. Next. All right, so the conclusion for this one is the focus on form approach to language learning seeks to combine the strengths of both an traditional focus on forms and the cognitive focus on meaning. In this approach, learners engage in meaningful communications while also paying attention to specific grammatical structures as they arise in context of communications. The focus in on both accuracy and fluency, and learners are encouraged to notice and reflect on the language they use in order to improve their accuracy over time. Overall, the focus on form approach seeks to strike a balance between accuracy and fluency, and it helps learners develop a more intuitive understanding of grammar through meaningful communications. Next. Masih ada. These are our references. Next. Thank you so much for your attention. Have a nice day.
Okay. All right, guys. So this is the last presentation. No. I mean, here we open the question for the other group.
Anyone, please?
Yes, anyone,
We are
please?
open
Please.
to question and answer. Maybe to help the audience would like to re-display again our slide.
Oh, yes, right.
Can I ask?
Sure. Introduction.
If you want to ask, please unmute, yeah. You may talk. Come on, guys, because we have the time.
Can I ask, please?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
you may on chat also, that's fine, yeah.
I'm gonna ask you about your presentation. What are some potential drawbacks of the focus on form approach? Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we answer or just waiting for the upcoming question?
Can I
Other,
ask the
please.
next question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so going back to the implementation for the focus on forms, I'm wondering how can teachers effectively implement the focus on form approach in the classroom? Which one is the best? And how to effectively implement it? Thank you.
Okay. Other, please.
All right. We only open for
Okay.
3
Yes.
questions, yeah. So it leads to every group.
Okay,
One more questions?
what
Okay.
I want. Okay, so you have mentioned many approach
Yeah.
on your presentation. What I want to ask is, how does the focus on form approach compare to other approaches to language learning?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
That's very good.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Okay, so I hope that you can hear my voice, guys. So I have been expecting about these questions because, yeah, when I read first about this and I know that there will be questions. So the answer for this one, what are some potential drawbacks of the focus on form approach? So the answer is one potential drawbacks of the focus on form approach is that it may not be suitable for all learners, as I mentioned it at the last slide. As some learners may prefer a more traditional approach that focus solely on grammar rules. Additionally, the focus on form approach may not be effective for learners who are not motivated to engage in meaningful communication. In short, this approach potentially have a drawback, like for example, if the student has low motivation for learning, and for those who like grammar, they want to stick with the grammar, and they think that grammar is more important than the fluency, while we understand that grammars and fluency are both important. That's it. I hope that answered the questions. Yeah.
Okay. Sudah kita buat puasa dulu. Right? Okay. So
Next questions.
I'm about to answer the second question. Hopefully that the response for the feedback from Sidik fulfill your insight. All right. So let me clear the question, the second question from Firda. So she asked about the teachers, where teachers can effectively implement the focus on form approach in the classroom. So this is focus on form, yeah. The newest form of the focus on form, yeah. So practically, teachers can effectively implement focus on form approach by providing the learners or students with opportunities to engage in meaningful communication while also paying attention to specific grammatical structures as they arise in the context of communication. So like we conduct in TESOL, the first thing we have to complete during classroom, we need to know our learners. So yeah, we need this pay attention, this process of paying attention to the learners of our students. We need to get to know what actually they need, yeah, what actually they want. And also, teachers need to encourage the student to notice and reflect on the language they use. And they need to improve their accuracy over time. So we recognize in learning cycle language acquisition, the first language interference is so massive. That's why we need to, what is it, recognize of the language they use in a daily. So as they may merge the language while they try to overcome this problem while learning of a second language acquisition. That's that's my response for the second uh, questions. So the final questions will be if there is one from Mumu. Yes.
All right, let me answer for the last questions from Lily. So how does the focus on form approach compare to other approaches to language learning? So the focus on form approach differs from other approaches to language learning, such as the traditional uh, focus on forms and the communicative focus on meaning. The communicative focus on meaning by seeking to combine the strengths of both approaches. The focus on form approach emphasizes meaningful communication while also paying attention to specific grammatical structures as they arise in the context of communication with the goal of striking a balance between accuracy and fluency. Okay, so that's all from our group. I think it's only 3 questions, yeah, enough for each group. Okay. So maybe it will be times for yeah. I will close, yeah. Stop share. Okay. Okay. So it will continue by moderator. Okay. So.
All right, thank you. So that's the end of the first presentation from the third group talking about focus on form. Now we are heading to the second presentation. So I will invite the group which will be discussed about the input learning, right? The second will be input, right? Okay. So for the group, time is yours.
I can't share my screen.
Tes. Kedengaran nggak, Mbak?
Aman.
Masih disable. Mbak Mun? Halo?
Halo.
Mbak Mun.
Mbak Mun?
Mbak Mun.
Mbak Mun.
Wait. Aku
Suaranya. Hello. For the next. Okay. Yes, Pak Muid. What's happened? Oh, really? Wait. How to ya? Maybe the other can. What about the other members of your group, sir? Oh, okay. Enable dulu share screen-nya. Multiple part. Okay, already.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for the time. And we are for a second group. Today we would like to present about input-based second language acquisition. Next slide, please. Well, this is our group here. For the first speaker, Pak Abdul Muid, and then Mas Wigi Ramadhani, and then me, Aziza, Joinda, and the last Yayas Clifford. Well, for the first speaker will be presented by Pak Abdul Muid. Time is yours.
Okay. Today we are going to talk about language input. Everybody, do you know what language input is? Yeah. Input is all exposure to the target language that is around us. We'll have put it in another way. Input can be defined as the language data which learner expose. For example, listening and reading. So input is the same as listening and reading. It is important to second language development because without listening and reading, there can be no output. In short, if you don't hear or see language, then you can't learn the language. To prove it, I want you to try this simple experiment. Anybody can read this. Yeah, think of a language you have never heard or seen. For example, I give you a sentence of Russian. Anybody can read this?
No, cannot.
Okay, you can't, right? Yeah, it is impossible because you never learn, you never hear, you never read about Russian. So this is the introduction of input. Okay, now I'm going to give you overview of language. Language input. Input is paramount important to learn a second language, as it exposes you to the real world usage of that language, helping you to develop your listening and comprehension skill, whether it's through conversation with native speaker, watching movies or TV show, reading books, and so on. And the second one, sometimes easy to understand input is the most effective to enhance fluency. Yeah, because when learners are exposed to content is just likely above their current proficiency level, it becomes a comfortable and enjoyable experience. This kind of input allows learners to understand and engage with the material more easily. The last is frequency of input is important. When you encounter the language regularly, it becomes more ingrained in your memory and becomes more accessible for use in real life conversation and situation. This consistent exposure is like exercising a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger and the more proficient you become in the language. Okay, next we presented by my partner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abdul Muhid. Now, rolling the role of the language input. There are many role of language input. The first is behavior and mentalist and interactionist. Now, behaviors. What is behavior is language learning as environmentally controlled by various stimulus and feedback that language learners are exposed to as language input. So it means that behaviors emphasize the role of observable behavior and environmental stimuli. In the learning process, behaviorists believe that learning is a result of conditioning where responses to stimuli are reinforced or punished, leading to the acquisition of new behavior. Now, moving on to the mentalist. So, what is mentalist in role of language input? Mentalism is a theoretical perspective that places a strong emphasis on the cognitive process and mental structure involved in learning a language. Unlike the behaviorist like before. Halo, kenapa? Ya, kenapa? Halo, halo. Oh, sorry. Halo, halo. Belum, belum, Mas. Oke, nah mentalist is a theoretical perspective that places a strong emphasis on the cognitive process and mental structures involved in learning language. Unlike, like I said, unlike behaviors which focuses on observable behaviors, mentalism suggests that internal cognitive mechanisms play a crucial role in language acquisition. Okay, moving on to the last interaction is language acquisition as the outcome of an interaction at the discourse level between the learner's mental abilities and the linguistic environment, and input as the role of affecting or being affected by the nature of internal mechanism. So it's similar to like the Vygotsky or ZPD, the interaction from the people who doesn't know about the language, then we try to approach them, we try to interact between to them, and then they know about the language, they know about the comprehension itself. Okay, please moving to the next slide, please, Mr. Okay, so now hereby the techniques. So there are four techniques in here. The first is input flood, and the second is input enhancement will be delivered by Mbak Winda, and also the crescent input hypothesis will be delivered by Mbak Supa. And also the authentic material will be delivered by my friend. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the Mbak Winda, please.
Okay, thank you, Wiki. So here I will explain about input flood. So for the first is definition. So a focus on form technique in which the teacher provide the learners with many example to the target form. So in the context of input flow, the term flood is used figuratively. Basically, input flood means giving learners so many examples or materials in the target language that they are flooded by the information. So it is more about the idea of providing learners with a large amount of information or language example in attempt to deepen their understanding of the language being taught. So the main idea is that the more exposure to the target language learners are given, so the better they will be able to understand and master it. So input flood is a teaching approach that aims to immerse students in the target language and expose them to a wide variety of language example to help them understand and internalize a particular grammatical structure, vocabulary, and language function. So you can see the example. No. You can see the example Anissa gets up at 7 a.m. and take a shower. She takes about 15 minutes in the shower. She dries her hair and puts on her makeup, and she tries on different outfits before finally deciding what she wants to wear. And she gets dressed and was don't start to the kitchen. So it is a sample of input flow. There's so lot of vocabulary and information in the text and grammatical structure. So it should be quite obvious that the target form is the third person singular verb agreement which appear frequently in the text. Please next slide, Mr. Okay, this is input enhance. So for the first is definition. So input enhancement is strategy that makes certain linguistic forms perceptually salient in order to make those forms more noticeable to the learners. As with input flood, input enhancement can be delivered in the oral mode or in the written mode. And in the written mode it is often referred to as textual enhancement and it involves highlighting, enhance the target forms of words by means of first typographic techniques such as bold facing, underlining, color coding, and or italicizing. So you can see the example. Anissa gets, so is bold facing and takes, and she dries, puts like that. So, oh, no. So by repeating the target form, use comprehension strategy to keep the learner's attention on the meaning. So the input flow sample from the above example is repeated in example with the target forms or the person singular present tense and enhance. So that's all to me. For the next speaker is Yaya Skalevara about question. Time is yours.
Thank you so much for Amelia. The next material is about techniques like constant input output input. The first presentation theory of input output is theory of second language education. He suggests that a person acquires second language effectively when there is slightly above their level of understanding. Or
Yeah, sorry for interventing.
Yeah.
Because your time is 10 minutes remains and your voice is sounds unclear.
Okay. Next. Louder ya. Belum Pak Malik. Okay, then when they receive input is slightly above their level understanding or system I+1 to encourage further learning development. In the context of learning theory, this input-based technique refers to providing language material for I+1. You can look in the example. For students, this material will be challenging enough to encourage language growth but not so difficult to learn philosophy for students. For explanation, I is current level of understanding, and then plus one is slightly higher level. Okay, next. Next, in the context of second language proficiency, authentic input material involve the use material and associated original material or authentic material in the target language the language being studied. The use of authentic material in second language learning aims to provide a learning experience that is more real and relevant with everyday learning use in the native speaker. For example, in reading authentic material, the teacher can use of books, magazine, article, and also comic books and for the target learning. And then the teacher can give the movies, television show, video, and target learning effective way to get used to information, accent, and culture of the language. The next material will be explained by Alice.
Well, thank you as a last speaker. I would like to explain about the benefits here. What are the benefits of our material is first, recurrent exposure to the target form will make it more silent and draw the learner's attention to it as well. And then the second is input-based technique expose learners to authentic natural language as used by native speakers, and then helping them become familiar with real world language, but not vocabulary and idiomatic expressions. And then we have provide the learners with ample exposure to the target form in a meaningful context. Input-based technique often include culture, references, and context, which help learners gain a deeper understanding of the culture associated with the language they are learning. And then for the last benefit is exposure to comprehensible input provided to learners with context for understanding language, making it easier for them to get the meaning of words and phrases in a practical context. Next slide, please. Well, as we know that this is our references from LSR 2008, and then Baharani 2014, and then Park Il-sun 2020. Well, next please. Okay, thank you very much for your kind attention. So, all of you, I think it's enough for the explanation of the presentation for our group. Next is the question and answer session. So please, from other group, give your question for our groups. Time is yours. For other group, time is yours. For give us question.
Can I ask?
Yes, yes.
Okay, Mbak Yuni.
Okay, thank you. So what are authentic materials in the context of language learning, and how do they differ from the textbook materials? Thank you.
Okay, for the next questions, please.
From group 3. Can anyone hear my voice?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So based on your present, what you already present, I want to ask about how can input by listening and reading be effectively utilized in language learning and acquisition? That's it from me.
Okay, thank you. Then maybe this is the last question. One more, please.
Nothing?
Okay, next question. Enough or?
I think enough. Just answer.
Okay, thank you. Well, I would like to try give an answer from Mbak Zuni. What are authentic materials in the context of language learning, and how do they differ from textbook material? Is it Azan, guys? So will we continue or we listen Azan first?
I think we postpone for a while, yeah.
Raja.
Continue aja ya.
Just postpone. Pause.
Plus one more. Okay.
During Azan. Okay.
Okay. Okay, I will continue this session. Well, I would like to answer Mbak Zudi's questions about the authentic. So authentic materials are materials that have been produced by native speaker in written or spoken language. Authentic materials can be newspaper, article, songs, or foreign language movies. Authentic material provide cultural information about the target language, exposure to the native language, and relate more closely to learners' need. Authentic material also aids more creatively teaching approaches. So and then the second, how do they differ from the textbook? Main difference between authentic materials and textbook materials is the authentic materials are real world resources created from native speakers, while textbook materials are designed specifically for language learners, often with structures and semantic approach to teaching the language. Both have their advantages and are often used in language learning to provide well-rounded learning experience. I think it's my answer from Mbak Zuni. Is it clear?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, for the second questions, will be answered by Mas. Yes.
May I ask you a question?
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to ask about how do input-based techniques handle multilingual text data and language diversity? That's all.
Okay, maybe the next question will be answered by Mas It.
Okay, we'll try to answer Mr. Agus' questions about listening and reading be effectively utilized in language learning and acquisition, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, listening and input through listening and reading can be highly effective for language learning and acquisition when used strategically. So listening and reading authentic content such as books, articles, podcasts, and movies in the target language expose learners to real-world language usage, idioms, and cultural context. And next, reading and listening help learners acquire new vocabularies and understand grammar rules in context. It is essential to encounter a wide range of vocabulary to build a strong foundation. And the last is regularly listening to native speakers helped improve listening comprehensions and pronunciation. Try to mimic pronunciation and intonation to enhance your speaking English speaking skill. That's it.
Okay, I wanna ask about Suya's question. So she asks about how do we input-based techniques handle multilingual text data and language diversity in second language acquisition. Well, input-based technique in second language acquisition focus on providing learners with meaningful and comprehensible input in the target language. These techniques can be particularly effective in handling multilingual text data and language diversity. So, for example, is first comprehensible input. Uh, Exposing learners to language that they can understand. It means that even if they don't understand every word, and the second is universal appeal. Input-based technique often use materials that have universal appeal or are designed to be culturally neutral. This helps in engaging learners from different linguistic and cultural backgrounds. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think it's enough for question and answer sessions for our group. I think it's enough, and thank you very much for your kind attention. That's all for our group, and the next presentation will be presented by next group. And for us, thank you very much for your kind attention again, and bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you very much for the input groups. So now we're heading to the next group, talking about output learning. So the time is yours.
Cek, cek, cek. Ada nggak suaranya?
Ada.
Jelas.
Ada.
Aman.
Nah, kok ditoblosin? Ikat Gus.